I guess for me, like I'd have to kind of scoop back a little bit in time to say, like, we all have our own peeling open, or what I like to refer to as our awakening, when we come into a realization of really who we are. And some people, they keep, like, it eludes them because they aren't understanding what the signs are. And I was one of those people. I really wasn't understanding why I felt all the things that I felt, or understood why I would see things or hear things. Like, all of my senses were dialed open, as I say. We can call those clairs, we can call them, our gifts of channeling. And because mine were all open and I wasn't aligned, like, let's say in a stacking way, so I could ascend into my purest soul self, it was all over the place. And so it was like this healing that happened, that all of a sudden, like, everything was like moved into an alignment, and I became hyper aware of the energy around me. And I call them nudges in the book, because that's when spirit started to really up their game, maybe, or maybe I was just more in this alignment that I could hear and feel those nudges very clearly. And so I followed those nudges, each one at a time. It was almost like this guidance. And what I learned from that experience is, when I don't resist it, when I stay with it, there is this beautiful propelling forward where I feel safe and comfortable. It's when I'm resisting and maybe needing a little bit more time, then I'm cracked open even more, and then I kind of go forward. It's really fascinating. So the principles came from the death of the old me.
When she smiles at you, she'll say, angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. No, no, angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. No, 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 no.
Okay, welcome. Hello. Welcome to Angels Don't Lie. I'm your host, Jeanne Street. And today I have a really, really special episode for you. My beautiful angel team is joining me. I have Colleen and Sophia, my angel sisters from another mother. And they are going to actually interview me for this episode of Angels Don't Lie. So I'm going to take this seat back, and I'm going to let them take over, and they can introduce themselves and tell you how we're going to roll.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Jeanne. Thank you for having us. This is so cool. So fun. My name is Sophia, and I'm an angel healer, an intuitive, musician, music teacher, creative artist. Anything that's artsy fartsy, I do it. So I love working with Jeanne. I love Jeanne's team, obviously. Who wouldn't? And that's me, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm Colleen. I have been a friend of Jeanne's for a very long time. So we've known each other since she was having her first child and I was having my second. Very long time, raised our families together, been through the thick of real life together. And now I've also been just a friend and supportive person in her life while she's, I always say, come out of the closet with her spiritual gifts, even though she's had them her whole life. And I'm also a mom and of 6 children whom I love very much. And I kind of just help her out with her business. And today we're going to talk about her very first book that she launched in 2015 called The Goddess You. And my favorite part about the book is the subtitle called The Principles for Living in Soul Alignment.
Okay, let's all do this.
Hold it up.
And the workbook that goes along with it for The Goddess You. And fortunate for me, I was actually a part of the whole process of when Jeanne was writing the book. And, I was there from the beginning iterations and the ideas, and until it got down on paper and through the editing process, and the whole birth of it. And it was a incredible experience. We literally met each other and started our friendship on the day that I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And she's there to just like embrace me with all this love, because she was also pregnant at the same time with her daughter. And I ended up having a girl as well, who the two of them became friends. So it's just a really cool story. And from that day on, we've been friends.
And we went on to like really support each other. In Colleen has seen me enter into different work fields. Like I always had creative energy. I love that you said that, Sophia, about yourself. Like anything creative, like you're in it. I was like that. Like I had a daycare business. I did a cleaning business, and Colleen came and cleaned. We cleaned houses together. She was with me, through the pregnancies of my 4 children, and I was with her through all of hers. And people, when our kids would go to school, the little ones, especially her twins, who are not her youngest, my youngest, and her twins were right around the same age, people would think that they were triplets or that they were all related.
Siblings, yeah.
They thought,
they really did.
Yeah. And even kindergarten, first day of kindergarten, we didn't know it, but we sent our daughters to this school in the same
exact
dress.
same outfit. And we were like, what? Same little white sweater.
Yeah.
Yep.
How does that even happen? That's like divine right there. That's God saying, yes, I put you each on each other's paths, but let me also just prove it to you that you're meant to be together.
Exactly. Wow. And I think, Sophia, for you coming into this, like, hilarious. Like I said to God, I really am ready for like someone to step in and support me in a new way. And when I put it like in a little, I went really, like, for me, vulnerable. I was like, I'm going to put this out on Instagram, or no, Facebook. I'm going to put this on Facebook, which is something I wouldn't normally do. But I wrote up this whole thing of what I was looking for. And I went into details of my angel assistant that I saw and I felt, and I knew God was saying was available. And I had quite a few women come forward, seeking it. Nothing is like connecting, maybe I made a mistake by putting this out there. And then I get this message from you. And it was just even like your picture. It was just like, oh, this is home. This feels comfortable. This feels safe. And so leaning into that, it's been almost a year we've been working together, coming up on that, right? I believe in June.
Yeah.
So, well, we're going to have our own first year anniversary.
That's so exciting.
I know. And like, you've just, it's like home. Like I said, like, I just feel like it's very comforting. It's very safe. And I'm sure it has to be intimidating coming into, this friendship that's been going on for 36 years. I'll say it out loud. That's insane. It doesn't seem possible since I just graduated, but yeah.
I have to tell you, there's nothing intimidating about working with the two of you. There's nothing intimidating, because you each carry such a wonderful vibration of love in both of your circles around you and for each other, that working with the both of you is just, it's incredible. It's incredible. So I'm so grateful. Yay. Let's get questioning.
So let's get going.
But currently I'm doing a book study on this same book with a small group of women. So it's even cooler that I'm like double dipping here. But going into each one of these principles. And so there's 12 principles in the Goddess You. And I love that in the beginning of the book, you introduce kind of your story and how they came to be for you, and what it was that you were struggling with that maybe you didn't even know you intentionally put out into the universe, or perhaps you did, to God, whatever, and like asked, like, what the heck? Like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable in my body. I know my life could be different, and it's not how I want it to be, and things just aren't smooth, and like, so you were feeling some sort of inner calling, but it wasn't really clear on the outside, and then these things came to you. And is how did the book, I know from my part, but it came to you first before it came to me. So when
Yeah.
it came to you, how did it occur for you?
So I guess for me, like I'd have to kind of scoop back a little bit in time to say, like, we all have our own peeling open, or what I like to refer to as our awakening, when we come into a realization of really who we are. And some people, they keep like, it eludes them because they aren't understanding what the signs are. And I was one of those people. I really wasn't understanding why I felt all the things that I felt, or understood why I would see things or hear things. Like, all of my senses were dialed open, as I say. We can call those clairs, we can call them, our gifts of channeling. And because mine were all open and I wasn't aligned, like, let's say in a stacking way, so I could ascend into my purest soul self, it was all over the place. And so it was like this healing that happened, that all of a sudden, like, everything was like moved into an alignment, and I became hyper aware of the energy around me. And I call them nudges in the book, because that's when spirit started to really up their game, maybe, or maybe I was just more in this alignment that I could hear and feel those nudges very clearly. And so I followed those nudges, each one at a time. It was almost like this guidance, and I could say no. And the times I said no, it would circle back around at a later date and come to me. And what I learned from that experience is, when I don't resist it, when I stay with it, there is this beautiful propelling forward, where I feel safe and comfortable and like fully embodied, and things are just easier. It's when I'm resisting and maybe needing a little bit more time, that maybe there's an emotional healing, maybe there's something else that's going to come up, and then I'm cracked open even more, and then I kind of go forward. It's really fascinating. So the principles came from the death of the old me.
That's beautiful, because of principles for living in soul alignment. You kind of broke out of the old you and created this new you. And these principles, they came to you, and you
Right.
knew that you needed to share them with other people because of how much it transformed your life. At what point were you like, I need to write a book?
So I knew all along that I was supposed to write a book. That had come to me very early on in my life. As a young girl, I saw it, but I never believed it. I didn't believe that was me. And so I would have glimpses of this energy where it felt like, oh, that's me. And one of those times was, and I write about this in The Goddess You, was when I was 30, maybe 34. My friends, Colleen and Carrie, my cousin, the two people that I was with daily, I shared with them this intimate piece of like, I feel like I'm supposed to write a book. And so for my birthday, they bought me a voice recorder, and they helped me to get this like journey going. And my husband joined in, and he bought me a laptop. And so I would set myself up outside with the kids by the pool, and I would like think I was going to write. And I had this whole story like started, and then I would delete it. And then I would start it again, and then I would delete it. And I just never felt like it was the story. And I was like, I just was so hung up in who I was as what the world told me I was, that I couldn't do it because I didn't know the right way. And so as I grew, and again, when it was about almost 10 years later when that awakening happened, and when my kids were old enough that they didn't need my ever presence in their life, like, like morning, noon, and night. Like I had some freedom and energy where I could start to try to meditate and be still, and I would start listening to these nudges, and then all of a sudden it would just download, and it would be like a very matter of fact. And so when the principles came in, they weren't all at once. It was more, it happened when I was praying and asking, how do I better understand this? Can you show me how to first like believe fully, and how to understand what you're saying to me? Because I felt them around me. I felt my angels. I felt departed loved ones, I couldn't make sense of it all. So I asked for these signs, for these teachings.
So, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, this book and the principles in it were not so much, or probably as you knew it, in opening up your mediumship abilities, but it was more in the self-healing piece so that you could get to your mediumship abilities. And
so even though because I did not believe I had the ability, even though I had the ability and I knew that I could see departed loved ones, I had dreams of them. I would, somebody would die and I would call that person and say I dreamt of them the night before, and I would tell them the story of their loved ones. I would absolutely have it, but I wasn't vested in loving myself. So when you don't love yourself, you can't see beyond that version of you where you're at that time. So that's exactly true. Like, they needed to help me. My angels needed for me to see who I was as God saw me, and had to do some healing of those layers to even get to that space of, oh, this is why. So I did it for one reason, like, yeah, I want to understand, like, this nudge feels like I can't ignore it anymore. Like, I can't, I have to do something about this. And then it led me to where I am, which I could not have seen coming.
Right. So you felt uncomfortable where you were at. You knew there was something more or something different that you wanted. You just weren't sure of the path to get there. And that was when some of these principles started to come in. And and the first one, of course, is quieting the mind. Well, the first three, actually. And I love that you mentioned layering already, because so much of this is all about layering. And it's not one principle at a time. It's kind of like this interwoven dance that they all play with one another, because it's not like, okay, quieting the mind, I'm done and over with that one, I'm going to put it to the side. It's it brings with you throughout, because you have to keep using that same principle through each part of your growth. And so I don't know if you want to touch on the quieting the mind principle at all, and what that meant for you, how that showed up. And
I'd love to. So quieting the mind, at the time when, for me, when I was writing the book, I was a very social person, and I was really, I think I defined myself on being liked and loved by other people, and the importance of like people pleasing. Like, I would overgive and overdo, and I just found, like, oh, if I'm not giving, then they won't love me. They won't feel good about themselves. It wasn't so much about me. Like, I wanted them to feel so good, and I would just, but I was still looking, I was still searching for love. I was still searching, like, does that make them happy? Are they lifted? Do they feel good? And that can be a lot of burden that you place in a relationship. I didn't really understand that, but there was a lot of drama around who I was at that time. And I was very busy. I was someone that I would live from event to event to event. So there was always a birthday, there was always a celebration, there was always something going on. So at this time, they said, quiet your mind. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, what does that look like? And this conversation wasn't like all like at once. It would happen in a journaling. It would happen in sleep. It would happen in spaces where I was quiet. And so, it didn't all happen in, at one time. This was from years of healing. So if you think, I started my shoe store in 2007, I closed in 2011. I had started to do some of this work while I was there. And then from 2011, when I stepped into this, until this book was published, I had some time. So the principles all came out, and I started teaching them around 2014, I think 2013, probably more like it. So probably 2 years time for them to fully come out and be explained. So quieting the mind, the best way they could teach me this was to be still. 1, don't pick up the phone and call people just to talk. Be still. Ask, is this necessary? 2, turn off the radio in the car. just drive, because I was so used to being noisy in the car. And you know, Colleen, because you'd be in the car with me, my baby used to cry and I'd turn up the
volume louder than
because like there's only so much baby crying you can hear. And I was a foster mom, and I always had somebody else's kids with me. So I just crank up the music, right? I was used to loud. So they said, turn it down. And so I learned to come inward. Instead of my energy being outside of me, I learned to bring it inside. And that was really key in just finding a stillness. So where I felt safe to be with myself. And sorry, the dog, she's having a party of herself. Must be a squirrel out there. Hopi, stop it now. So to come inward instead of outward was a really unique experience. And that really what is quieting the mind for me. It's not so much turning off all the chatter, because that's almost impossible to do. It's more bringing our energy in and paying attention. Like if I can feel my heartbeat, even with this noise and the dog barking, can I feel my belly? Can I feel my legs? Like, can I be in and stay present?
So more, I mean, yes, external, I mean, your internal chatter in your mind, but a lot of the external chatter and chaos too, you were just like, let me pull back from that.
Exactly.
I feel like just in witnessing, I feel like you did a lot less entertaining, maybe less social.
That kind of came a little bit, that came later on. Like in the beginning, it kind of like was more teaching me to come in and be safe with myself. And then slowly, you know, as it grew, the circle of who I would hang out with got smaller automatically, because automatically I was releasing all of the people pleasing and the trying, and I didn't need an external validation to be me. So yeah, then I didn't have to have parties or, you know, entertain in order to fill up space.
I love, Jeannie, that you talk a lot about nudges and how spirit would communicate with you with nudges. When you would find that quiet and you would settle down all of the external noise, that's when you started to be able to hear and feel those nudges more, because you weren't so distracted by everything else.
Right. So quieting the mind helps you to understand the way you sense spirit. And that's what it is. It's sensing something that is effortless. And it wasn't in the trying, it's in just the being that we will commune with heaven.
I love that. I love that. It's not in the trying. And I so resonate with that, because I feel as though anytime that I've tried to connect with spirit, with God, anytime that I try to do anything spiritual is when I'm met with resistance of whatever kind. But when I don't try is when it seems to just floodgate in. And yeah, I can hear.
Because the trying is an opposing energy of sorts. The trying is even with like putting the principles down in form. Like it couldn't be something I tried to do. It had to effortlessly happen through the experience of what I was healing at the time. So being the first, quieting the mind, coming in, and then effortlessly the next principle came in. It's just wasn't being withheld, but I didn't have to try to reach for it. It just came as I was ready and prepared.
Which was a great segue to self-love, which was the second principle. And so how did quieting the mind transition to the self-love aspect? How did that kind of enter into the picture?
Right. So when we are still with ourselves, we can start to notice things. And the first thing we'll notice is how uncomfortable we are. We'll notice what's wrong with me. We can list them out very quickly because our brain is on a repeat pattern for our old habits. And so what came up for me was everything that I wasn't. You know, I am not this, I am not this, I'm not good at this, I don't know. And it was full of those type of things. And that's automatically when they were like, now you see what you've been saying to yourself inside and why you're so lonely, because your internal energy reflects outward and comes back to you. So the people that are around you, the experiences that are coming to you, are all going to be layered in that energy. You're teaching people from that point of view. So if I'm teaching people to love me at this level, well, who could love me at this level? I wasn't loving me. I wasn't kind. So that self-love came in to see, okay, let's change this internal dialogue, because fear is really contaminating everything about you. It's twisting the truth to make you stay in a smallness. And that was a big like eye opener for me.
So it didn't come in as an automatic, oh, now I should love myself. It came in as an awareness of a self, almost hatred, then versus a self-love, and then having to reframe that and be shown that, you know, until you can do this, you know, you're gonna be mired in all this unhealthy muck that you don't want.
And so they taught me the fear voice versus the love voice, and they brought in Shmigo. And I loved this at the time, because at the time, Lord of the Rings was a popular movie. And, you know, I love to talk about movies. It's been something our family does. So, you know, I just thought, well, this is hilarious, because in Lord of the Rings, it's Shmigo. And Shmigo is all about my precious, you know, holding the ring, and the ring of you know, evil is you know, and Shmigo will just want let it go. And so our internal, you know, ego guy, when contaminated with fear, is like that. It doesn't want to let go of those beliefs. Our Shmigo guy is like, this is my precious way of being, and you're not going to tell me I'm good or I'm this, like, no. And so that was like, oh my gosh, he is ruining my life. like what? I have given my power to this external source, so to speak, and the truth of who I really am is being hidden. And that's the true gem. And so that's what brought me to do the fear and the love list, and to really explain who Shmigo is for each of us, is that it's our ego contaminated by fear. And we get contaminated with the overuse of our logic brain, the outside teachings that will, you know, stop us from being imaginative, stop us from using our source of truth, which is God, as the remembrance of who we are. Not that, you know, teachings are bad, not that, you know, schooling is bad. It's not that. But if we go away from who we are as a core and we put that down and below, well, how can we rise to be who we really need to be?
I like that you often give yummy nuggets for your listeners to take away. And I think that one of the yummiest nuggets that I got from you when I first started working with you is that love thought, fear thought list. And having done that multiple times over, because it changes, and you know, learn new things about what's a fear thought and what's a love thought as you uncover more about Shmigo, that was a huge thing for me, that I highly recommend. Can you talk about that list a little bit more and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, so that list is an ever shifting list. It's not something that stays set in stone, because as you become aware of what Shmigo is saying to you, of how your fear leads you in the identity that you are, then you've upped your identity. You've up leveled your energy. You've come a little closer to your purest self. And then Shmigo comes on board again to say, now I'm going to try this route. I'm going to try to unravel you over this way. And so it's really interesting how that's love and fearless grows as we grow. And it's something that I use still to this day, because it's a telltale sign of, okay, I'm feeling resistance here. When I feel resistance, I know there's some sense of fear on board. So I've got to take a look and face it. And so that fear list and that love list are really important, because it also reminds us where love is available. Not that we're supposed to focus always on fear, but where is love available when something feels like it's so off and so dark or so dreary? Can we find the semblance of love? And I think especially because we've just come out of this aftermath of COVID, if we even want to say that, because if it's even over, and then we're still witnessing the upheaval of so much fear with the war in the Ukraine and the political climate, like all of that angst still picks and pokes at our Schmigo guy. And then we're not remembering where is love. We're not remembering all the good that has come forth, or that there is still good. We feel still despair. So we have to look for God. That's remember me, remember me. Watch that sunrise. Watch the full moon. Go for a walk in nature. Like, it doesn't have to be huge magical. It has to be small. Look at the green coming out in spring. Like, can you breathe it in? That's love.
I also love the layering effect. So just when you were speaking of the list of the fear thoughts versus the love thoughts, in quieting the mind, it has you become more aware of what your thoughts even are. And so when you're quieting the mind and noticing your thoughts, then you can start to see, okay, which ones of my thoughts are love and which ones of my thoughts are fear. So it's kind of going back and picking up the quieting the mind while we're acting on the self-love. And you'll notice that happens. I mean, but our listeners will notice that happens throughout the book. Like, you just are constantly going back and revisiting the previous principles and incorporating them into the new ones.
Yeah, I feel like once you're awakened, once you understand it, then you can't not look at it. Like, you kind of will reflect on it. It's not supposed to be addictive, but it is a repatterning of our, like, what is my energy? How am I showing up? Does this feel tight? That's how it affects our health and our well-being. It affects our central nervous system and our brain thoughts. It affects how we communicate, how we show up in the world. It really matters.
Yes.
It does.
Then principle 3, we start to talk about changing our reactions, which again goes back to, it pulls in the quieting the mind and the self-love as well. But then it starts to look at, and again, I mentioned in the book study, like, it's not changing their reactions. It's not like, you're a jerk, you need to change. Yeah. It's change your reactions, meaning yourself. So it's really taking a look at yourself and how you respond or react to external or your own thoughts that are happening.
Yeah. It's very reflective work, right? It's interesting. You can witness yourself, and not in a judgmental space. I'm going to say that too. Like, changing your reactions isn't about you slamming yourself and, going back to the old way, which is why we started quieting our mind in the first place.
And
rather,
self-love.
Yeah, it's rather being a witness to, oh, wow, like, that's an opposing energy to love. If I'm going to react in that manner, that isn't in the pure vibration of love. And then we can start to understand frequency when we start doing that, because everything is energy. We can start to notice, oh, my heart feels safe, or doesn't.
I really do love the conversation of reactions, though, because this whole book is all about self-healing. It's all about healing yourself to live in soul alignment and to change your life. And with healing yourself, it's so true that they build on one another, because once you start to incorporate more self-love, which is by noticing where your fear thoughts are and where your love thoughts are, and knowing where you get hung up there and what pulls you out of self-love, those Schmigo thoughts and those fear-based ego thoughts, that is absolutely the precursor that comes before changing your reactions. Because your reactions, I mean, we have a reaction to everything.
Right.
And nowadays too, it's almost like we are stimulated to have a reaction to so many things in 30 seconds, especially if you go onto anything online. It's not even just your typical social medias. It's really any platform where you could be stimulated multiple times. You're having reaction after reaction. It's like they're compounding on one another, and it can send you into this like frenzy.
There's science behind this. I mean, marketing experts would use this in, like, when we were kids, TV commercials. I mean, they'd still have commercials, but I don't really watch regular TV as much as I used to. But Brian, my husband, was saying, oh, he watched this, I don't know, it was on the radio or whatever, but they played these old jingles for for commercials, and he's like, I got everyone right. And I thought, well, see, that's marketing, right? Because that's brilliance. Like they had you remember. And so that's a form of like manipulation. I'm going to manipulate you into feeling something because that's going to get you to take an action. And so our reactions are the same way. We get reactive in a response. It can be an addiction. So that response can be out of a judgment, an opinionation, an anger, a self-loathing, a disrespect of self. So it's really interesting when we start to look at our own self as we're marketing our energy out into the world, and our reactions are telling the story. If I'm reactive to you, it has everything to do with me and nothing to do with the other person. And
right.
so,
And we have choice, right? So we have a choice.
free will is everything.
A reaction doesn't, and then we talk about the pause, right? So it's taking a step back, again, going back to quieting your mind, noticing, that state of awareness, and giving yourself a pause before you give that automatic reaction that we've just been doing without even thinking, and having a choice. How do I want to respond to this situation? And one of the things you offer is shut your lips. Silence is golden.
I
And
love that one.
Just
That
really not say anything.
Yeah.
And that's a choice too. I mean,
Yes.
and sometimes that's the best choice when you don't know what to say. And I think you say that in here too. Like if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything and just keep it to yourself.
That was a rule in our house anyways, like, growing up. And so it just expanded upon that in terms of like, if what, you can think it and then you can work it out in your thoughts. And then you can talk to yourself and you can work it out in your thoughts. But if you react to it without doing that first, you're being very irresponsible, because then you're acting upon just an energy. You're not going off of a truth in your body. You're not checking your source of energy. And so your reactions are you checking your source of energy. Is this of love? Is it necessary? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? You check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that leaves a lasting impression on the person that you're reacting to as well, because people remember how you make them feel. And that's an interesting thing, because we walk around with hurt feelings and then we hurt other people. Not because we want to hurt them, but because we have hurt feelings. So that's why we're going to go back to self-love. We're going to heal our feelings first. We're going to step into, I have to self-love. I have to self-soothe. I have to understand what's based in love and what's based in fear.
I think that that's such a good point that I was just about to talk about, and then you kind of brought it up, how our reactions, I feel like, are very indicative of the healing work that we need to do.
Yes.
Because go ahead, what were you going to say?
Yeah, or our avoidance to the healing work, I was going to say.
Yes, absolutely. Or our resistance to the healing work. If we're responding to, let's say we feel insulted by something, right? We are going to react in a certain type of way, depending on how much self-love we have and depending on how much healing we have done to that, whatever we have been insulted by, wherever it hit us in our ego, in our psyche, in our emotions, we're going to react based off of that.
Right. And you might even think we're reacting in a way like, I have to stick up for myself. But do you? Like, we have to ask ourselves, like, is it necessary? Do I have to stick up for myself? Or is this about the other person? Sometimes it isn't about reacting. Sometimes it is about letting it go, because that has a bigger energy than your words or your reaction to it, just your silence. It leaves space for their own thoughts to come to them.
And their own reactions. Because if you're stopping and you're not engaging with an unhealthy interaction, the other person is left with a choice as well. They're either going to also stop or they're going to continue. And then they have to face how they're reacting. You know, if it's just this battle between the two of you, then then there's no space for anybody to see the truth and what's going on. It's
So
just trauma.
it removes a victim mentality. It removes someone else being responsible for how you feel. It puts the energy back on you and how you show up to life, how like your healing is the most important thing that you can do for you and your loved ones. And it takes the energy off of like telling someone they have to change. You, and it puts it back on, well, I can shift my energy and watch and participate in that. And I loved that. That was an experiment that I did. They were like, well, check this out. So I would have like my own mini experiments, and I would be like, well, let me see if I don't roar my big, Leo voice here and I don't yell, let's see what happens. And I would notice like there was these huge shifts in my husband and my relationship, because I'm not yelling and being reactive to his own crazy or his own pain. Instead, I was allowing him space to do what he needed to do. And then he was like, well, what's happening? Like, because I was normally so reactive and now I'm not being. So I had to reteach him who I was, which is such an interesting and opportunity for healing, such a beautiful opportunity for healing.
So aside from staying quiet and working thoughts out in your own mind, what are some other tips that you can give people for changing your reactions?
Definitely the journaling about it too. Like that's one of the reasons I created the journal to go along with the book, because using the pen to the paper, it gets you out of your head immediately. There's science behind that. So it becomes a meditative state. And for most people, when we are contaminated by so much fear and lack of joy, the one thing we say we can't do is meditate. I mean, I would try and try and try, and I couldn't still my brain. And the trying isn't what we need to be doing. It's the just settling. And so the writing became a really beautiful place for me to settle. And the angels were like, this is how people will get into the meditative state. This is where they'll start learning the vibration of their soul, because their words are going to come out on paper, and then they're going to be like, oh, this is groovy. And automatically you start to simmer down. You simmer it down. And that's how we learn to start to meditate and be still.
I know a lot of people have a really hard time with journaling. And that was something that I think Colleen and I both witnessed in the Goddess You book study, is that a lot of people would say, I just can't do it. I can't journal. What do you say to that?
I say, look, the thing that they said to me was, give the prompts. It's not an open space where you're just like, what do I write? They're questions. And so all it is you answering a question. So for me, I would say that looks a lot like resistance. If you can't answer the question and go in there, then you're still resisting that healing, which is totally understandable. And so maybe there's a little bit more self-love that's needed here in order to uncover, like, why am I resisting? Where do I feel this resistance in my body? Can I move my body? Yoga is a beautiful experience to start to breathe and be in. The first three principles are so important, because they start to get you into the rhythm of your soul vibration. And that's an awkward experience when you have been numb to it. And you're used to numbing, whether it's with food, TV, avoidance, whatever your thing is, that's your habit. And so we are basically, long story short, you're rewiring your brain to do new habits. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But the resistance is keeping the old patterns there. So when we really want to make concrete steps, we have to be willing to look inward and say, what is this? Am I willing to follow this nudge a little further? Because that's what it is when we don't want to do something.
So taking these three principles and not really going any further, even though there's so much more, what did you start to notice when you were applying these on a more regular basis? What do you feel like it did for you? What would someone want to do these for?
So I'll tell you when I didn't do them, that I wouldn't change. that things would return the same, or there'd be backward motions in what I could, that's the best way I could describe it. Like backward motions. There would be more tension in my home. There would be like, I wouldn't propel forward. And I was like, okay, let me give this another good girl effort. And, that, whether it be journaling or being still, taking myself to lunch. And then I would see this monumental energy of going like, I can breathe easier. I would literally feel better. Like how I would rise in the morning felt different. Like there was a different energy to everything. Food could even taste better. Like my joy of cooking came back. Like joy was there instead of me having to have event to event to event to have any kind of semblance of fun. Like joy was making a presence every day, the more I stayed in alignment with it. And that was been like my own, like I was the test dummy in this.
I was going to say, it does feel like you were kind of doing an experiment with yourself to see.
Yes.
If I don't do this anymore, what's going to happen? And yes. You were shown right away what would happen.
Exactly.
And you didn't like it.
No, and I didn't like it. And I didn't understand the whole meaning of all of this, like why I even did it. But, that came later. So when we put the effort in, God reveals more. The why. So what, for me, like the question is like, who are you going to become when you do this? Who will you be on the other side? I think it'll surprise you. It surprised me. That's for dang sure.
I love that. I love that so much. So you start with quieting the mind, and then you moved into self-love, opening your heart
into their self-love. Yep.
Opening your heart to love yourself. And then you went on to changing your reactions, putting an end to your reactions to others.
Just calming my Leo girl down. Like, you don't have to roar. Like, you can be uneasy, but like my uneasiness went on paper instead. And then
I love that.
Yeah, because that's when I could understand, like, wow, that's a bunch of I could see very clearly where fear was tricking me.
I can't wait to talk about the next principles. There's so much more. I mean, that's just the first 3, and there's 12. There's 12. So we will chat again. We will ask you more questions.
What's possible just after 3?
Yeah, true. I was going to say, did you start to notice like the response from, say, your family members inside your own home? Did they start to notice or mention that they noticed a difference in either you or,
Yeah, the response wasn't what I thought it was going to be either. You would think that people around you would be overjoyed, but really they're scared. They have their own fears. They have their own resistance to change. And nobody really likes change because that means there's some sort of work involved. And so that didn't show up as yummy as I would have hoped for. But I also see that as so much love because it kept me going. Like, it didn't stop me. I saw it as like, wow, okay. Like, maybe they know something I got to keep learning. I don't know. Like, I wasn't completely understanding. And that's, like I said, some friends moved away, and there was questions that came at me, from in my family, like, you're different. And I was like, I know. And it wasn't meant in a good way.
I think a lot of people start to experience that when they start to do soul development work, especially if it's a new concept for them, if they haven't really ever dove headfirst into soul development. The people around them will notice a change. And like you said, change can be uncomfortable. And sometimes it can thwart you. It can stop you in your tracks and make you want to go backwards because people liked the old you that was manipulated easily, or that was a people pleaser because they benefited from that.
Right. So you're reteaching them as you're teaching yourself the new identity you're choosing, the identity of your highest soul self. And so it's being very gentle and not forceful with your energy. That's one thing that was very apparent too when I was doing this, is like, not to shove it in their faces. Like, it's not because like all of a sudden I felt like I had all the answers at all. It was a gentleness to say, like, especially once they all came out, it was like a gentleness to say, like, I'd love to share these with you. I'd love to share them with you. And those experiences were healing sessions and group meditation events where I could share and deliver them and give them a little time to digest them. And that felt so groovy when it was happening. I really loved it. I had no idea that it was going to be an actual book.
Well, I'm so glad that it did become one, because I know it's changing and changed, will continue to change my life. And I know that every single person that reads even just one principle, or even just hears this, there might be somebody that's listening to this right now that, go home and write about it. Write down what question could you ask them, Jeannie? What's the journal prompt? If you haven't read the book, you don't have the journal in front of you. What's your prompt? What's the question they could answer?
So I use this phrase in The Goddess You called Nancy Drew It. And Nancy Drew, when I was little, I think some people know, but it was a movie, a TV show, and Nancy Drew was a detective, and she was always looking for the mystery and trying to get the answers. So I wouldn't necessarily be a journal prompt. I would say Nancy Drew It, which means be the detective. Go a little further with how can you show up and quiet your mind. Find those spaces, uncover the hidden gem of you in stillness. Can you turn off your radio? Can you not text? Can you put your phone on silence for at least an hour a day and go outside? Nancy Drew It, like, see who you could be. And I think that's the exploration that this book is about. Like, can you go through these steps in that kind of space? I'm so proud of you and the work you are doing to raise the vibration of our planet. I invite you to join me at my Angel Healer Immersive retreat. This is a group experience where I will guide and support you as you further develop your spiritual gifts. You will learn the ins and outs of how to safely commune with heaven in a sacred space that is nurturing and expansive oriented. You were born a healer, and with my God-based method, I will lead you to further awaken and embody your soul's purpose and fulfill your soul's legacy, while teaching you the foundational tools for channeling messages and healing energy from the divine. You will learn how to deliver messages from departed loved ones and channel energy as you lean into God's love and witness miracles as they transform your life. Here's a little more of what's inside my Angel Healer Immersive. A sacred space to cultivate and expand your gifts. My God-based method for channeling messages and healing energy from the divine. Guided instruction and support from my heavenly and earthly angel team. How to work with your clients' Akashic records, guided meditation to your light room in heaven, and an Angel Healer attunement and certification. I hope you will join me at the Angel Healer Immersive on June 4th. Tickets are available on my website, JeanneStreet.com.
Fun.
Yes.
Yay.
Well, guys, listen, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Angels Don't Lie. I really had a lot of fun talking about the first 3 principles with my beautiful angel team, Colleen and Sophia. And we look forward to sharing the next 3 principles in our next episode. So stay tuned. Have a beautiful day. And I know what I know, because angels don't lie. Bye, guys.
You'll never worry